Hey guys, Sean here. Welcome to the F1 Word and to the preview for the 2023 Spanish Grand Prix. Now, this is not usually a race I look forward to at all. In fact, it's one of my least favourite races of the season. However, I'm actually really looking forward to this one this year because it's going to be fascinating to see how things have improved, if at all, now that F1 is finally back to racing around the old configuration and that pesky final chicane I've spent years moaning about is gone. And on that note, let's have a look at the circuit, the changes to the layout, and crack on with the rest of the preview. So, last weekend, F1 was in Monaco for the, Monaco Grand Prix, where Max Verstappen took the win in tricky mixed conditions. But now, it is on to Barcelona in Spain for round 7 of the championship season and the final one of this back-to-back run of races. A lap of the Circuit de Barcelona-Catalunya is 4.657 kilometers long, that is, if you work in miles, just over 2.89, and is made up of 14 corners now with 66 racing laps scheduled for Sunday. No race lap record to tell you about because, of course, that will have been set on the now old layout and not on the new layout, which is actually the old layout, which let's not get into that. As already mentioned, the configuration has changed for this year, with it switching back to the old final sequence of corners last seen in F1 in 2006. So instead of that slow chicane, drivers will be flat out from the exit of turn 12 through the right-hander of 13 and the final corner, all the way until they reach the braking point for turn 1. With the circuit reverting to that layout, there has been some improvements on safety as well, with Tech Pro barriers added to the final 2 high-speed corners, and the turn 1 runoff has been widened and includes more gravel. The hope is that the changes will allow for the cars to get closer through the final sequence of corners and aid overtaking down the straight and into turn 1. And on the subject of overtaking, there will once again be 2 DRS zones in Spain this weekend to help drivers get some moves done, with the first between turns 9 and 10 and the second down that long start-finish straight. I'm just hoping that's not going to be too overpowered down that straight though. We'll see on Sunday, of course. Since its debut on the calendar back in 1991, the circuit has hosted 32 races, with Nigel Mansell taking the first win and Michael Schumacher and Lewis Hamilton holding the record for the most wins with 6 apiece. The most recent winner at the track is Max Verstappen, who led home his teammates Sergio Perez and George Russell, who took the final step on the podium last year. Charles Leclerc retiring from a fairly comfortable lead, 13-odd seconds clear, wasn't he, with mechanical issues, handing Max Verstappen not only the win, but the lead in the Drivers' Championship, another one of those big turning points in the early part of last season. Who will come out on top this time in Spain, though? Red Bull will be favourites and will be targeting another win. Verstappen has 4 already this season and Perez has 2. That is all 6 race wins between them this season. Domination. That's all there is to say about that, really. Well, that and the fact that 6 is also the number of dry tyre compounds available in the Pirelli range. Oh yes, it is tyre talk time once again, people. The compounds available for this one, as tends to be the case around this track, are towards the hard end of the Pirelli range, and so they are the hard C1, the medium C2, and the soft C3. That is the same nomination as last season, but it is important to note that the C1 is actually softer than last year's hard and is a new compound, so that should, in theory at least, give teams more options when it comes to race strategy. It is also worth a mention that with the final chicane not in use, have I mentioned they've reverted to the old layout? I don't know if you've noticed so far. The new layout will mean the track is not as hard on the tyres when it comes to traction. Thanks to a combination of the high energy nature of the circuit and the high track temperatures, which peaked at 51 degrees, last year's winning strategy was a 3-stopper with Max Verstappen alternating between the soft and the medium tyre. In fact, most of the field pitted at least 3 times, Valtteri Bottas being the highest placed official 2-stopper in P6. And traditionally, this one does tend to be a 2-stop race, to be fair, because the track is tough on tyres, meaning those who are good at managing their rubber could be rewarded on Sunday. Just something worth bearing in mind. And last year was a 3-stop because of the facts I've already mentioned, but also the fact nobody wanted to go near the hards on race day because they were so poor, Magnussen being the only driver to use them. The fastest pit stop in Spain last season was carried out by Ferrari, who serviced Charles Leclerc's car in 2.23 seconds. And the pit lane loss time in 2022 was mostly between 21 and 23 seconds. Safety cars could, of course, play their part in strategy, with 9 races in Barcelona featuring at least 1 safety car period, the most recent one being deployed on lap 8 in 2021 after Yuki Tsunoda's car suffered an engine failure. And keep an eye out on practice on Friday, as Pirelli has confirmed the drivers will have 2 additional sets of hard tyres to test. They feature the new construction that was initially going to be introduced for 2024 but will now be used from the British Grand Prix onwards to make the structure more resistant to fatigue, because the lows generated by the current cars have already reached the end of season targets and we're only 6 races into this campaign. Crazy. Pirelli, by the way, goes on to say that the new construction will have no impact on the technical parameters or performance of the tyres. Now, just so you know, I'm having to record this on Tuesday night as I'm out during the day on Wednesday and I'm live the same evening, so take this weather forecast with a lot more salt than usual. It is highly likely this will all change, but it is worth a quick look anyway. Friday is currently forecast to stay dry with highs of 23 degrees, and Saturday is expected to be largely the same with highs of 23 in time for qualifying. But on Sunday, it is currently forecast again to be around the same temperature for lights out, but there is a threat of a shower with the highest risk being around 73% for the race start, but that does reduce as the afternoon goes on. Again, though, a lot of ifs and buts at this stage of the week, and honestly, it'll probably all have changed by the time this video even goes out, let alone the weekend. But that is what it says as I sit here and record this on Tuesday, but we'll see what happens. And your schedule for this one is, well, the same as last weekend because it is another European race. So FP1 once again kicks the weekend off on Friday from 12:30 p.m. BST, and FP2 takes place later that afternoon at 4 p.m. FP3 on Saturday is at 11:30 a.m. with qualifying underway from 3 p.m. And it is lights out for the race on Sunday at 2 p.m. and once again that is in UK time. Now, before I make my predictions, I'm just going to briefly go through 3 news stories that have been doing the rounds since Monaco. First up, more changes at McLaren as they've announced the signing of Red Bull's Chief Engineering Officer Rob Marshall, who will take on the role of Technical Director Engineering and Design at the Woking team on January 1st, 2024. McLaren's signing of Marshall comes 2 months after James Key was moved on, and he will work alongside the incoming pair of Peter Pedromu and David Sanchez. Marshall, who joined Red Bull from Renault in 2006, will step back from his current role at Red Bull with immediate effect though, and his departure will bring to an end his 17 years with the world champions. Toto Wolff has said that Mercedes still needs to dial out what he described as a nasty rear end on the W14. Nothing worse than a nasty rear end. In Monaco, the team bought their highly anticipated new update package and the feedback has apparently been largely positive, with Lewis Hamilton saying he feels as though the car has progressed. Wolff also said that the new update package is a good baseline and added, quote, "We've taken questions off the table where we weren't sure of, be it the front suspension or our bodywork, so let's work from here." All eyes, though, turn to this weekend where we should all get a better idea of just how much of a step forward Mercedes has taken. But Toto appears cautious, stating that Barcelona will, once again, be about data collection and further analysis, but is hopeful that over the next few races they can really increase the performance of the car, but don't expect it all to come at once in Spain. And finally, for this part, Ferrari will have some new updates on their car again this weekend. Updates they hope will give them a big step forward. But the long-planned new front suspension will not be one of them, as confirmed by Frederick Vasseur, who also explained that further developments would be introduced over the next 2 or 3 races. The Ferrari boss has admitted that so far in 2023 the results have been far away from expectation. Vasseur does though believe the pace was there in Monaco, as evidenced once again by their qualifying pace, but it was mistakes including poor communication with Leclerc during qualifying on Saturday which led to a penalty, as well as being caught behind Ocon in the race which cost them a chance of a better result on Sunday. The car is also inconsistent to drive in races, apparently, with Vasseur adding, quote, "It is true that we were struggling on the long stint with consistency. We are trying to develop the car. It could be mechanical or aero. We are working on it." But he is reluctant to consider a shift in development direction during the season because, as long as he is convinced the current car can be improved, Vasseur believes it would be a mistake to change targets during the season. Here we go then, time for me to make some predictions, but before I do, please remember, do not take these too seriously, they're just a little bit of fun, but if you do disagree with my picks, then you can let me know yours in the comments section down below. And looking back at my Monaco predictions, look, I went bolder than usual, and to be fair, I wasn't a million miles away with Alonso, but in the end, still not great. So let's put those to the back of our minds and move on to this week's picks. For Spain, I'm not going even remotely bold. In fact, you can probably already predict my predictions before I make them this week. On paper, this track should suit Red Bull down to the ground, and the one potential weak spot for them, the final chicane, isn't being used. So really, the only thing standing in their way of victory is themselves. Things like driver errors, reliability, and all of that kind of thing. Assuming they have a clean weekend, I cannot see anybody stopping them. And by the way, when I say potential weak spot, that's one of those on paper moments because Verstappen did just win around Monaco, which is pretty much all slow corners. And I think it's fair to say that that car is, let's face it, pretty much good everywhere right now. Sure, updates will arrive for other teams and we'll see what happens with Mercedes and how their update goes on a proper circuit. But even if that does give them a boost, they're not going to suddenly overturn Red Bull's advantage. That's just not realistic at all. So, yeah, I'm going all in on Max Verstappen as saying he will take pole position on Saturday, win the race comfortably on Sunday and set the fastest lap of the race. And behind him, I'll go with Sergio Perez completing yet another Red Bull 1-2. But given how strong his form has been over the years in Spain, the potential gains from the update, and to make things somewhat interesting, I'm going with Lewis Hamilton for third, although, to be honest, that final step on the podium could easily go to any one of Alonso, Hamilton, Leclerc, Russell or Sainz, for example, but I'll go with Hamilton this time. As for best of the rest, so the fifth best team on Sunday, I'm going to say that Alpine builds on a great result in Monaco and heads up the midfield. Maybe that wouldn't be all that surprising though, because that's where they were in Miami. They were strong in Australia before they collided and were top of the midfield in Jeddah. Just something worth pointing out there. Although I'm hoping McLaren might be in the mix, because I'd love to see a proper Alpine versus McLaren fight across this season like we saw last year. Yeah, okay, I've made some pretty obvious predictions this week, so I will make some bold calls as well. I'll go with Q2 for Logan Sargent on Saturday, say that Pierre Gasly sneaks into the top 6 on Sunday, and yeah, why not? Oscar Piastri out-qualifies and out-races Lando Norris across the weekend. Look, some of those probably won't happen. I know they won't, that's why they're called bold picks, and to be fair, when I said De Vries would out-qualify Tsunoda in Miami, he did, so sometimes they work out, but this is me, so yeah, probably not. That is it then for the Spanish Grand Prix preview, but don't forget to let me know your thoughts and your predictions ahead of the weekend in the comment section down below. Now, I will be back soon with some more content as always, including the usual reaction live this Sunday. In the meantime though, please do leave a like before you go, as it really does help the channel out, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on any future videos or streams. But as ever, thank you for watching. I've been Sean, this has been the F1 Word, and until next time, goodbye.